You're watching the 420 Pace Network, found at 420radio.ca and paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
This podcast is for adults only, should not be used as a meal replacement, and may contain nuts.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Noobie and the Doobie. My name is Timmy. I am the Noobie.
Mary Jane, I am the Doobie.
We are very excited today to have on the spot with us Amanda and Annie from the Hi Ladies podcast. Annie, and Amanda. I have messed those names up all morning trying to figure them out. How are you guys doing? Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us. I think we're doing really well. I'm doing really well this morning.
You can't speak for Amanda or Annie. Wait, hold on. Let's do this.
Annie?
Okay.
Amanda.
So if you're listening, the one on the right is Amanda. Does that work?
No, they're listening to me.
All right. Well, okay, if you have audio, if you have stereo earbuds, listen to which side everyone's on. Anyways, I am the Noobie. That's the Doobie. You can call me Timmy. You can call her Mary Jane. Talk to us about before we even get into the podcast. But talk to us just about your own personal journeys. I had a chance to listen to your very first episode. I actually stopped partway through because you guys are in season 3 right now. I stopped partway through the first episode because there was a lot of information starting to come out because it's kind of like your origin story. And I was like, oh, no, wait. I want to hear the origin story. But I learned enough to realize that you actually started at a very similar place to us in terms of you're coming from very different backgrounds. And that's of course, our stories as well. And then as it kept on going, I'm like, oh, my God, I think we could have a lot in common. But then I stopped it and I listened to more recent ones because I was like, I want to hear the origin story. So talk to us about how you guys got together, and then we'll look at the actual got into cannabis in general. But how did you guys connect in the whole generation of Amanda and Annie deciding we should do something together?
Well, it started on the tarmac at the elementary school when
on the tarmac,
dropping our kids off to go to school.
Oh,
yeah. So
sorry, Timmy homeschooled his children, so he
I
has
didn't,
no idea.
Yeah,
the lingo.
I didn't know about the tarmac lingo.
Oh, the tarmac, yes, it's a real social hub.
Okay, all
like
right.
There's as much as children socialize during recess on that tarmac, parents find other parents on that, and you can feel it. Like first few days of school, you're scoping out. You're like, who do I?
Yep.
Who's cool at school? Exactly.
Okay.
Well, Amanda and I both ended up on parent council, and on one particular day, we were making almost 300 hot dogs, I think, for the school.
Wow.
And there was about 5 moms in this tiny kitchen cooking all these hot dogs. You can imagine the smell. Somehow we got talking about cannabis, and it turned out that all the moms there that are volunteering their time, the real good old moms that are on the PTA, all of us were consuming, had something to do with pot.
Yeah. With cannabis. Yeah. We had something to do with cannabis on that day. I think I had just gotten my first job in the cannabis industry, and I had shared with you that I was doing that. And somebody else overheard and was like, what's that about cannabis? Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, we closed the door to the hallway, right? We were just like, the kids can't hear this conversation.
Yeah.
And we spent the next, hour stuffing hot dog buns and talking about
growing, trimming. And Amanda and I realized there's a whole world of moms out there who are in the closet, who are pretending, not discussing these things, not sharing their own experiences for fear of the stigma.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then we started having phone calls in the evening after we had put our kids to bed, and we'd both be smoking a joint. We would be having these, somewhat high level conversations about what was happening, in the world around us, just as moms that are consumers of cannabis. And then we kind of said we should be recording these conversations. I bet other people would be interested.
Mm-hmm.
Then we were locked down, so we said, "Hey, we got nowhere to go. Let's do this.
Let's do it."
That's
Love
awesome.
it. And Hi Ladies was born.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, now I feel bad now because I started homeschooling my kids because number one, I did not want to get up early to take them. It was pure convenience. And number two, I don't like people. But now you kind of, made me feel like I just missed out on something.
Well, not really. You're here in the cannabis community now, and that's these people, right?
Okay,
You
so I
come to
didn't.
it when you come to it.
That's exactly it, right? And I mean, I was pretty new to Barrie. Like, I didn't have any friends at all. My husband and I and our first child had moved up to Barrie from Newmarket, which is, it's only like a 45-minute drive, but
Yeah.
I suddenly was in this new space where I knew nobody.
Yeah.
And it's funny, the tarmac is a funny place because you think you know people and you don't know people.
Mhm.
Like, you have no idea what they're actually like, because you only get like 4.5 minutes at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, right? And then you start hanging out, and then you got to be like, got to find a new way. Got to find someone else.
The tarmac to me sounds a lot like growing up in the church, which was my background, because everybody was just like, everyone thought they knew everybody. And I'm finding out there are probably a lot of people within my church community that probably used cannabis but never could bring it up because of the stigma attached to it. But it's very easy to pretend to be somebody for 1 hour every Sunday. So it's that same sort of thing. You got to kind of start to deep dive, and next thing you know, people start revealing things. You're like, oh, you use cannabis? Yep, but I would never ever bring that up.
Yep. No, you're totally right. And the church is such a great analogy for it. I remember one of the first conversations that I had in a Bible study before entering the industry of cannabis, but knowing that cannabis was about to become more than just a recreational thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sitting in, and I think we were talking, you know what? I can't even remember. I still have the notes from it, but I had said, like, well, we can all appreciate the fact that Jesus smoked weed. And that's what, like in a Bible study of like 25 people. And that was the moment that like everybody in my church had sort of changed their perspective of me. But at the end of that Bible study, I had like 10 people reach out to me, and they're like, I'm sorry I didn't have your back in the study, but I totally agree with you. And that's when I knew that like I could be the change in my church.
Wow.
So I have conversations all the time with my pastor about, she's like, I don't agree with you. And I always say, like, we don't have to agree. That's the beautiful thing about conversation. We can have different perspectives, different outlooks on the way that we do it, but still listen and appreciate and, be friends at the end of the conversation. So
you are still involved in a church right now?
I not so much since COVID. I've really, because my church is so far away from us.
Okay.
That I've taken a back seat, but I still I chat with my pastor all the time.
That's something I've never understood. That when people have a church, because you said I'm assuming your church is in Newmarket, because that's where you were, and now you've moved. It's only 45 minutes, but you still 45 minutes on Sunday. Because I'm not really like, I believe that if you believe in God, God is everywhere. So like, couldn't you just change churches? And people are like, oh, you just change the church.
That's where the community aspect comes in, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It becomes that community aspect, right? So when you change church, like here in Barrie, I've probably gone to a dozen or more churches trying to find that community.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it can be hard sometimes.
That's why.
You get.
That's why I was in the same church for 35 years, and it didn't matter. People came and but this community was there. I'm interested, though, in particular about your status right now, because as soon as I came on to do this podcast and started this, back in April, I've been touring the last decade as a professional comedian. And a lot of my work was done in the church world, because that's where my initial connections were, and that's where I do a clean brand of comedy. And just by doing the podcast, just by standing on the advocacy side, without even being a consumer, I have received specific emails and text messages, basically saying, I've lost work, like going forward. People who used to hire me, friends who used to have my back, people who have distanced themselves just by me being positive in the space. So it's interesting to hear somebody who is currently involved in a church community, because as much as I've had people who have embraced, and we have people who watch and listen to this show that are in the church, they don't consume, but they have kids that consume, they have parents that consume, and so they're interested in my perspective of that. But I've also received the negative backlash as well.
You've even had somebody question your faith in as if.
Oh yeah, I'd go directly to hell just by doing this.
Do you know
podcast.
what I mean? Like, as if being an advocate for cannabis means that God doesn't love you anymore, that you don't love God. Sorry, is that right?
I've been questioned about that. Yeah,
like I don't understand, because I grew up being able to accept whatever I chose to believe. Now, within reason, if I said that dogs created everything. My parents,
which is a possibility.
I mean, it is, but my parents were always like, well, show me the facts that back that up. And that's why I personally had problems within the church, because I kept asking questions that nobody could answer. And when nobody could answer the questions, it was kind of like when I smoked my first joint, and I'm like, this isn't that bad. Why is this illegal? And then my second and third and fourth, and I realized very quickly that the facts didn't quite present themselves in the way that I was experiencing it. So that was kind of where my journey started. It's like something's wrong.
Like Marianne and I have a similar journey, and Timmy and you have a similar journey. I grew up in a very non-secular house where my parents were also like, fine that you believe in religion. There's stuff in all religions that you might be able to resonate with you, but we're not going to feed you one view. And I grew up in a house where my mother consumed cannabis. Other members of my family consumed cannabis. So it was never looked upon in a dark way.
It was never.
So that's what kind of makes the conversation so interesting between us. And I think between you two as well, is you can come from it from such different views, different worlds, and still find common ground.
That's it.
And too many people, though, like we talk about, raising the bar, breaking the stigma, and having the conversation. And the breaking the stigma happens from having the conversation. And there's just too many people that want to draw the straight divide and literally will cut and shun. Now, and for every person that's like that, there's someone else, who is accepting and willing to have that conversation. But I think that's what it's just encouraging to us to see, to see you guys out there, because there's a lot of times where in the cannabis world of communication, where the conversation is trying to be had, it's often people who are from the same world, and so they speak the same language. And really, what we need is these conversations. So even though you both now consume, I'm correct in saying that, the fact is that your stories, though, open up a relatableness with a community of people that might not consume, but can understand your story or can understand your story. And that's incredibly helpful to helping us all come in and have that conversation together.
Or just giving people, excuse me, the chance and to hear other people's stories. People are more likely to share their own stories. Go, oh, I'm not alone. The best notes and letters we get are from people who say, I've been in the closet for so long, and I use it because I have anxiety. I can't sleep. It makes me a better mother. I have nausea, but I hide it because I don't want people to see me as that person. But hearing the High Ladies speak about it as functioning human beings makes these people who write us and go, I'm going to out myself. I'm not going to be afraid. I am going to be proud of who I am. Right? which is so liberating.
Yeah, and I mean, we've even gotten letters from people who say, I'm in the closet. I'm still in the closet. I was inspired by your podcast. I'm going to give you this story, but please don't share my name, just in case. And you know what? That's fine. Like, I remember reading those stories and being like, oh, that's so funny. I got really high once too, and I threw up all over the place, you know, like, and when we share those stories, it makes it okay to, you know, to do dumb things. It makes it okay to say, I do this and I'm not ashamed of it. Like, there's been so much shame that has been associated with a bloody plant.
Yeah.
Like, really?
Well, I think the problem is people look at us like we're potheads first. No, we're doctors and lawyers and teachers and comedians and educators that just happen to like smoking pot, whether it's recreationally or as a choice medicinally rather than other medications. We need to stop seeing people. This is where I like to break the stigma. I started working in a glass store, and 90% of the people walked in and were blown away at the fact that there was a younger, well put together, you know, pretty looking girl behind the counter when they're like, I expected to see a bum. Like, well, I'm not going to pull my pants down, but, you know, like, I can help you purchase something.
Yeah. And it goes back to that stigma, and that's, Amanda and I talk a lot about language, you know, pothead. It has such negative connotations and denotations. I'm a cannabis user. I'm not a stoner. All of those words have such nastiness. And something that I get a lot, and especially when the podcast first came out and I was outing myself within the community, is people going, you smoke pot? You don't look like you smoke pot.
Right.
And I was like, what should I look like? Like, do I need a face tattoo? Or like, why don't I look like a cannabis user?
Well, because a cannabis user is a 20 to 35-year-old unkempt male sitting in a couch with a bag of potato chips on his stomach with no drive and no passion.
Actually, you should know what the sign...
That doesn't describe me.
No, you should know what the sign for being able to indicate a cannabis consumer. What are the side effects? One is not visible.
Oh, dry mouth and red eyes.
So, if chances are, if I've got red eyes, I might be high. I might be. Or I might not have red eyes.
Allergic to the pollen in the air.
Or maybe you were just crying because you were told you're going to be locked inside with your children for the next month.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, there's also Visine too. And I think a lot of us I used to have like my cannabis case, and then I would have my after cannabis case, which came with like hand sanitizer and perfume and gum and perfume. All the stuff to like, because God
before
forbid
you smoke, you put your hair all back so your hair doesn't.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Tie your hair up and then, you know, drop it back down, little spritz, and you're good to go.
It's amazing how much people had to dance around. Like, I'm just coming into the space. I mean, the entrance
legalization.
The entrance into the space was pretty much just before legalization. We're not having this conversation if Mary Jane was.
I was like, you don't know anybody that smokes weed?
Unfunctionable. Like she was functionable, and it blew my mind when I found out that she smoked weed, and she was highly functioning and, you know, good and kind, and, you know, like, it was just it blew everything that I thought about of what I would think of. Because in the church, it was disinformation or misinformation. I had no idea really what was out there.
Yeah. I found cannabis myself. I found cannabis when I was a teenager, and I ended up leaving the church because of all of the negativity that I was receiving from that. And weirdly enough, because this isn't something that often happens anymore, but I came back to the church. So I had almost 10 years where I had nothing to do with my church, and then came back, and I was heavily involved with my church for about 5 or 6 years, and then, you know, heavily involved, and then stepped away, and then have stepped even further away. But like Mary Jane was saying earlier, or maybe it was Timmy that said it, but like, God is everywhere, and like, you don't have to attend church to be spiritual, right? And that for me was a big thing, was that I don't have to do that.
But you originally stepped out maybe not primarily, but the cannabis issue was a breaking point of some sort.
Yeah, it was a huge one because it was still very illegal,
Yeah.
right? And there was, a lot of those things happening. But I think stigma forces us into our own little closets and forces us into doing and behaving in ways that we would never dream of doing. And like we stigmatize anything, and I can show you the examples of that, right? But when we allow ourselves to be put into that space, we're no longer we're not advocating for ourselves, and we're not advocating for whatever it is we feel so passionately about, or for the other, millions of other people out there who are of the same mindset. So when, if I can break a stigma, even if it's just with one person in one moment, then when that person interacts with somebody else, then, the hope is that you remember all of those other times where you met somebody who you didn't expect to consume cannabis. And words are important. Sorry, I did want to this is my favorite topic right now, about words are important.
Yeah.
She's obsessed.
I'm literally obsessed with how important words are. And I think it's because I value kindness so much, and especially kind words. But words are really important. So I have removed pothead, stoner, marijuana, weed. I've pretty much eliminated those words, and I'm sticking only with cannabis.
Dopehead.
Yep.
Because I listening to your very first episode, I'm glad you brought this up about the words. I was eventually going to get down the route. One of you had mentioned dope almost within the first couple sentences, and you had a very brief interaction about the use of dope and that terminology. And so early, even just in our conversation here, you both seem very clear on using cannabis as the word. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. So when did that sort of begin to change? Because one of your first words on this podcast was calling it dope. And
it probably was shortly after that first episode.
Within the first 4 or 5 episodes, we became very aware of language. And we definitely, in the first, half of the first season, say words like marijuana, dope. And as we became more conscious of how the words shape the stigma, how the two play together, we've really made a conscious effort to call ourselves out on it when we make the slip, because it's a lifetime of using this language. So relearning how to speak within a context that is uplifting to cannabis and not it going back into those government-made reefer madness ideas, we realize that language is very important. And we are learning on the go. We are not trained as radio people, as
public speakers. We are not radio people.
I am a behind the camera person. I have a degree in photography. I feel much better on the other side. But yes, we talk, even every time we talk now, we're talking about this use of language. And if we are going to destigmatize, part of that is the language. And it goes right across the board in all aspects of your life. You think we used to say the postman, the garbage man. Well, we don't use those terms anymore. Slowly we start to realize, well, that's kind of an exclusionary term. Or the word marijuana. This has deep-rooted, historical, heavy roots. If we're going to treat this as a medicine, then we need to use the terminology that goes around it.
Yeah. And I have had discussions with people where they, we go back and forth about weed and dope and pot. Those are the cultural words that surround the, the illegal industry, right? When it was illegal, we had to come up with these words so that people didn't know what we were talking about. And that was perfectly relevant then.
Yeah.
And when you have things that are like MDMA is still illegal, but that's why people call it Molly, right? So that, you can have conversations and not.
Yeah.
But that's not the case anymore. And if we want to be able to do the research and we want to actually know what, how can we properly dose people with this medication, how if we want to enhance our knowledge, we have to use the right words for things.
And we call each other out. There's been a few times on shows where I've said something after listening to the show. I'm like, ooh, that sounded cringeworthy. So on the next show, I bring it up. I out myself. I say, hey, I said something on the last episode that, we're live and we're talking. Things are going to come out. I want to acknowledge that I didn't say that right. And I'm going to try and do better in the future. And that's another thing is we're all going to fuck up. So when we do go, I'm going to learn from that instead of being like, I didn't do that.
Right. And I think it's important for us to call each other out. Like I have been in situations now where I have called somebody out for a comment that has been made and been like, hey, that kind of wasn't a very kind comment. It might have even been borderlining racist. So, like, hey, be aware of that. And I have never had somebody turn around to me and been like, no, it's not, or angry with me. That most people go like, oh shit, like, hey, thanks. Like, and even if it's like, I don't agree with you, there's no negativity behind it because I think it's just the language is changing.
And we constantly have to be learning.
Well, I mean, the fact with cannabis, like with all things, but cannabis especially, we're learning so much at an extremely fast rate. And like, for example, you were saying cannabis is the word that we should use. And that I'm huge on language because words are spells is why you spell words. That's why I use positivity instead of negativity. But they're saying now that because if you go like the genus, like the actual like plant subspecies and species, and there's cannabis sativa and then, or it's cannabis sativa L or something, and then it goes into hemp and what we're calling cannabis, which is THC, which is actually like a different offshoot. So eventually we're going to have to go to this cannabis sativa L.
No, I don't think we will never have to refer to it as cannabis sativa. We will, if anything, like we will get away from words like, what's the strain you're smoking? Because
cultivar,
right? Cultivar,
we will start by us using those words and sort of like modeling it for other people.
Yeah,
so like when I go to pot shops, I ask them, who's your favorite cultivar right now? If you were buying a cultivar right now, what would you be buying?
And that separates a good bud tender from
the bad bud tender. Right? If somebody has to ask you, well, what do you mean? Right? And then you're like, okay, just, mental note. Okay. But
language is always evolving. So yes, it will, Marianne, it will evolve. And hopefully we can be there alongside. And
when we'll talk about things like like narrow leaf drug types and broad leaf drug types, right? Like those are important. And like we shouldn't be using sativa and indicas and hybrids. And I don't think we should be. That's my own personal thing. I completely understand why the recreational market set it up that way. Very much like how the liquor store has your red wines and your white wines, right? And they're in separate sides because if you like red wine, you go to the red wines. If you like white wine, you go to white wines, right?
But 15, 20 years ago, Marianne, when you bought cannabis, who did you buy it from?
I bought it from somebody who I got the number from somebody else. And it was always Buddy. And it was always, my options were, do you want the $50 bag or the $60 bag? And that was it.
And it wasn't, do you want it to do this? Do you want it to do that? It's like, this is the green stuff I have this week. You weren't saying, is it sativa? What's it going to do for me? Is the dude in the basement with the dope, whatever bag of dope he had that week, that's what you went home with.
Yeah.
And if it was August, you were getting stems and leaves because last year's harvest was almost done. But you got what you got. You couldn't be a consumer the way you are now. So there wasn't the language of the consumer.
That's right.
Well, I think the education that's out there right now, both for those within the cannabis space and those that are outside of it, is tremendous right now. Like I am learning at a feverish rate just by being around Mary Jane and doing this podcast and having the guests on and just talking it all through and just soaking in kind of what's going on. Because for me, as a skeptic by nature, I needed to see, I can't just have someone say, hey, try this, it's good. You got to tell me. You got to tell me why. Like I'm on a very particular health journey right now, and I'm very specific.
There's a problem with all of that, Timmy, is because although there's this great education out there, like these podcasts, the average consumer walks in to a cannabis store, like you guys were saying, and generally they ask, would you like indica or sativa? And that's after the, do you know what you're looking for? Because if you know what you're looking for, that's a great starting point for them. But most of them are getting an education from this CanCell program. I took it. I don't know if you guys took it. There was a lot of old information in there that we've already learned has changed. And I'm like, why are you not educating people on the importance about terpenes? Why is this not a necessity on every cannabis product that's out there? What, like food, the ingredients?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. The education stuff
it's there, but it's not for the average consumer, because the average consumer doesn't know.
That's part of the problem. It's not there for the consumer, and it's certainly not there for the bud tenders. So the bud tenders can go in and get their $35 CanCell program. And it covers the very basics. It covers, I like to call it the smart serve of cannabis, right? It's how to tell when they've smoked too much, right? And even that is like a really loose guideline, right? Because consumption doesn't always dictate impairment, right?
I just want to say thank you.
So, like, I can consume and I can do almost all of my daily functions, right? By choice, I don't consume while driving, and I don't consume, immediately before driving. But if it's been a couple of hours since I've consumed, I have no problem, not a second thought to get in my car and drive, because I'm not impaired.
The only times I ever get asked if I'm impaired is when I'm not impaired.
Right.
It makes me laugh so hard. It's like, I think I need to fuel up because people think I'm high, which means I'm not high.
That's funny. You're like, no, this is me on edge. I need to go have.
That's exactly it, right? Yeah. So consumption doesn't dictate impairment, and when you give people a little tiny bit of information, there's like two avenues it goes. Somebody's like, oh, a tidbit of information. I want to run with this and learn everything I possibly can. So they're going to be out there. They're going to be searching the YouTube videos. They're going to be doing all the other things. And then there's people who are going to say, great, I got this information in my little piece of paper. Now I'm going to go and pretend like I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right? You can. Bud tenders who are really into being the best of the best, they can take a CanCell expert course.
Yep.
Right? And it's like $1,000. So your part-time bud tender who's spending 20 to 30 hours in the store isn't going to pay for that. That's like, a month or more's worth of their salary.
Yeah.
Right.
So they're not going to invest that. So then you talk to companies who are like, hey, would you be interested in any of your bud tenders taking this course? And they're like, no, it's way too expensive. The store owners don't want to pay for that.
Yeah, well, the bud tenders do get some sort of training, because when I was there, we got training on the different products with a certain license. I don't want to be very vague here. So a licensed producer basically paid for us to do this seminar on their products that they were going to be bringing in. So it's like, why? I'm not getting paid to watch this thing and learn. You guys are getting paid.
That's right. And I mean, if you look at what happened out east in, I think it was New Brunswick, and I'm not sure if Nova Scotia and PEI got in on it, but they are buddies, so I wouldn't be surprised. But out in New Brunswick, Tweed made a deal with the province and basically said, hey, all of your bud tenders are going to take our course. And so out in New Brunswick, their equivalent of our CanCell is a program that was created by an LP.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
How is that okay?
Problematic.
There's so many levels of this is a questionable business deal. Like that's where I instantly go.
But we always go back on the show to we're still babies in this legalization.
That's right.
We're still learning to walk. Things are changing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And, we say it on the show, like, we hope that things will get better. We hope that the longer that it's been legal, the more we can, create a structure around this that works. When you think about the LCBO in the 70s, they weren't allowed to show anything. They had little labels on boards, and you went and you chose a name. Like, oh, I like that name. There weren't beautiful labels on wine bottles, and there weren't craft beers and all of that. This has taken many, many years. And even to see how far cannabis has come in 3-4 years, imagine us now 4 years down the line.
Yeah.
As we address these issues like equivalencies, like training, like oversaturation of cannabis stores, which is just a government cash cow.
Mm-hmm.
If you want, everybody's like, why are there so many stores? So go look into the licensing program and see what the government is making off of this. They don't care about the stores. They're getting their 2 years of licensing and money and all of that shit. They know that 50% of these stores are done in a year.
Yeah.
So this, hopefully, the waves will get less tumultuous with time.
And hopefully our governments don't decide to, support the monopolies, right? And that we end up with, 3 or 4 big brands that just resell us what can happen. And I mean, I definitely see us headed in that direction. And that's why it's going to be so important for us to protect small grows. That's why it should be so, next season, I know we're right at the beginning of season 3, but next season is very exciting because it's going to be all about growing. And that's what we need to do is we need everybody growing their own pod. Even if you don't do it well. I'm not a very good grower, but I still grow my own pod.
But if you're a consumer that uses cannabis stores, where was your cannabis growing? Was it local? Is it Carmel? Is it nice local cannabis? Or is what are the company's practices?
Right. Is this being shipped in from, across the country? That's an important question. And nobody seems to be asking the questions. And I don't think it's because people don't want to know. I think it's because people aren't comfortable asking those questions yet. They don't know how to ask those questions.
They don't even know what questions to ask.
Exactly. And I think that when, we did a great episode once on, improving your bud tender experience, right? So, how to ask those questions and, not to be afraid to ask those questions. And if your bud tender doesn't know, that's perfectly fine. Ask them to find out.
There's a lot that they can't say, so how can you ask them in a way that they can answer?
Right? How can you circumvent the question so that you're not actually asking a question, but an answer could come out of it?
It's funny. It almost sounds like when you want to talk to your kids about sex, but you don't exactly know how to approach it, but you have to, and
Yeah, and they don't necessarily want to ask, and it takes me back to my religious experience as well, right? I mean, there's lots of people. I was in my early 30s teaching a class of people who had been in the church longer than I had been alive, and that baffled me. It baffled me that hierarchy had been overshot because people get to a point, and it's true within the cannabis industry too. I can imagine, you've been smoking weed since you were, 15, and now you're 60, and the last thing you want to do in this changing world is try to ask a question and seem like you actually don't know anything about the weed you've been using for the last 40 years of your life. And that happens in the religious sector, right? You don't want you to stop asking questions because everyone assumes that, hey, I've been in this a long time, I don't want to look foolish now, and that's a big problem.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. And I think that's where sharing our lived experiences comes down.
We're really foolish on all of our listeners' behalf. You guys do the same thing. If we come to it from a light point of view where we can say, oh, I fucked that up, or I don't know that, or I mean, the Noobie and the Doobie, the way you play off each other, it's such a great dynamic because you're able to have these conversations. Timmy doesn't look like he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just somebody who's learning.
That's awesome because I don't know what I'm talking about. So
no, you absolutely do not know what you're talking about. Washing your bong in the dishwasher.
It seems like so easy. It seems like it would be the easy answer. I don't understand.
So I have a really pressing, important question. Do you remember the very first time you actually felt high?
Oh yeah. The first time I ever felt high?
Yeah, like the first intoxicating experience. Do you remember what happened?
Vividly.
Okay, everybody seems to like you either do, and it was like play by play, or you don't, which means it's good either way.
I remember
I was 14, 15 in the Don Valley in Toronto, around a fire, trying my first beers, trying my first dope, all of that. It's all very vague to me. I remember the first time really feeling like I was a cannabis user, and that was at 19 in Amsterdam. Because that was for the first time I had choices, and was able to go and buy it and not be in the closet and be high and be okay with being high. I was away from my family. It was very freeing. So there wasn't that, I think a lot of people for the first few times, there's the nervousness. I'm going to get caught. Somebody's going to smell me. There's all those other things. You can't even enjoy the high. But yeah, when you're as young as I was, it's hard to remember. I just jumped in.
Oh yeah,
fully,
yeah.
Right away.
After that first experience, I was like, I can see this be like, this is a lot of fun. And I do remember saying, this is a lot better than drinking. Because I, at that point, had already been drunk before and just said, I was like, I don't like that. I don't know why I'm sorry, Annie. I don't know why anybody drinks alcohol. It is awful. Ugh.
You definitely when you too much alcohol.
Yeah. Vividly in my parents' basement with my brother and his friends, 2.5 foot bong. I'd come home from cheerleading practice, and and they were like, "She's gonna rat on us if you don't at least share it with her. So here, include awesome. Her." And I was
you're guilty. You're guilty.
And would you have ratted on them?
Probably. Just knowing my 14-year-old self.
Oh well, your brother made a good choice.
Well, the first time I experienced getting high pretty much derailed my future of consuming cannabis because it ruined my bowling score, and I can't risk that going forward. I'm too good of a bowler.
Well, we could try something having a bad first experience. A lot of people do. They've maybe been drinking at a party, and then they have a joint. We got a lot of stories like that on the podcast. Of course, they green out. They don't know.
Or experienced users, right? Like you and I, and somebody new comes in and they want to tango with the, tango with the big boys.
Yeah. You need to start with the pinner, right? We'll be over here with a fatty.
But then at the same time, like the experienced users either not including, like, oh, you're new, so here's a little tiny one, and like belittling that person, or not looking out for that person and not like, oh yeah, come in here. We're all going to share this big giant blunt. But like the fourth times it comes around, you're like, you kind of under your breath, like you can hit that a little smaller now. Yeah. Right. But because cannabis is a community, right? Like it's not just people getting high in their garage and like sitting on their couches, right? It's engaging people who like, cannabis is so much better when it's consumed in a social atmosphere.
Sometimes I like smoking alone. Sometimes
I usually smoke alone, but especially in those beginning times, it's just like when you drink. Like you don't drink for the first time by yourself.
Hopefully not.
Right? Like it would be pretty sad if you did. So
I feel like cannabis can be used both ways. It can be used recreationally, as well as like socially in a social setting to bring people together, like the community. Can also absolutely be used personally. If I'm going to wait for somebody else that consumes cannabis to consume, that's not happening.
So especially in this relationship here, right? I mean, she can't wait for the time where we can both take a break to go have a smoke together. So she's just got to have to go do it.
Yeah. And we time our breaks accordingly because I do consume multiple times a day because I only smoke if I were to like use a lot of edibles and stuff, right? I'd be able to keep my consumption or my THC levels a little higher than that. But I like smoking. It's relaxing to me. There's a ritual that comes with rolling of the joint, and
I'm all about the ritual of rolling a joint. Like I smoke joints almost exclusively.
Yeah.
A big part of it for me is the rolling. It's very meditative. Mm-hmm. It's very sensual. Yeah. It's therapeutic.
Sensual.
I mean, I'm
Kind
a
of like
really
growing.
good. I learned how to roll joints at high school parties, where I would find guys who had dope, cannabis, dope at the time, and I would say, I don't have any. Can we have a little contest? And I'd say, you give me a little bit of your cannabis, and if I can roll it faster and better than you, then I get to keep the joint.
Nice.
And I never once lost, because they look at me like, who's this little girl?
Yeah.
She's a little girl. She doesn't know how to. Whoop, 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 whoop.
Yeah, big balls.
That would have been like me. We did an episode where episode 5, MJ taught me how to roll a joint.
It did take him a while.
Would you like to publicly acknowledge once again how awesome the joint was, just to be let it know?
It was pretty good. It probably would burn with like it was good airflow.
Did you roll it with the filter in?
He put the filter in afterwards.
Well, that's all right. That's all right. I'm a filter after person. I never roll with the filter.
I roll with the filter. See, my mom smoked pot again, I'm using all the wrong words. My mom smoked cannabis
You can
for
say mom.
40 years. And even in her 60s, I had to roll her joints for her. So I'd go over and visit mom. Mom, I got to get some laundry done. While you're helping me with my laundry, I'll sit down and I'll roll 25 joints for you for the week.
That's awesome.
And she never learned. And if she ever rolled one for me to smoke, I would immediately tear it apart and be like, no.
Yeah, I'm very particular. Just like I don't like anybody to make my tea, I don't want anybody to roll my joints. I will roll my joints. And it's funny because Timmy has said, well, why don't you prep? And just before you go to bed, he's nodding his head because he's told me this multiple times. Before you go to bed, roll up 8, 10 joints, whatever it is you need for the day. Look at the heads. Watch the heads. Roll the joints for the day, and that way the next day you can just put them in a tin and carry them around. And I mean, there is a time to do that, but
there is a time to do that, and the time when I do that is when I'm going to weddings, or funerals. Weddings and funerals, I pre-roll my joints for the day because I accept the fact that there will not be time, and it might make people uncomfortable.
Yes.
I never do it either because I don't know what I'm going to want to smoke the next day. Am I going to be cleaning and therefore need my LSD? Am I, wanting to be creative and I need my lemon haze? Maybe I need to really relax. And so I'm going to go, I always have 8, 10 different cultivars on the go. So Timmy, if you pre-roll the day before, A, you're not going to know what's in all those unless you label each joint, and B, you don't know where you're going to be in the day, right, Marianne? Maybe it's a sativa day.
Yeah, I think that comes down to personality. Like I literally this 2 days ago, I spent 2 hours and 43 minutes. Like I timed it for a video I did, prepping 1 month of my breakfast vegetables, packaging, weighing them, freezing them, and to me, that I'm like for 1 month, I'm going to say breakfast time. I know exactly what I'm eating. So I think that's a personality thing. I think I'd be very organized if I were
It's a definite personality thing because in the morning, I don't know what I want to eat. I don't know what I want to wear. I'm in the moment. Maybe I don't need it until 1 in the afternoon.
My husband picks out all of his clothes the night before. I cannot. What if I wake up and I don't want to wear that anymore?
Yeah, you wasted all that time.
Now, not only do I have to spend time doing it, but I have to think about the time that I wasted yesterday picking those clothes out.
Oh, see, that's why you need to have a wardrobe like mine. I have 7 pairs of these wool socks. I have 5 black shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, and the only reason I had the second pair of jeans is because they were on special. And Mary Jane said you need to have a backup.
Well, especially because the last
everybody
pair
needs back plan B.
His last pair of jeans actually got torn at the Raptors parade.
Yeah, I almost got shot at the Raptors parade.
He was literally in that section where the gunshot went off.
Yo, that's terrifying to me.
Fell down and ripped my jeans. It makes a great story. But yeah, I think if I was consuming cannabis, I think it does come down to a personality, and that's why. I mean, like with anything, right? There's no right or wrong, but I'm pretty sure I would probably have a carrying case. I would have them. I might not even have them labeled because I'd probably already have decided these are the ones. This is what I would smoke.
he would be, if he was a smoker, he would consume, I'm going to say vapes, and it would be little cartridges in a little nice little case with the pen and everything all in it. It would have the charging cord in it. Like,
and it would be carried in its same spot in my bag every day.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
And probably maybe I keep pushing for the CBD oil.
Yeah, we're leaning right now towards, because although I've tried smoking 3 times, and I probably won't go back to that form of consumption. When I talked earlier even about the education that's out there and whether or not people are tapping into that as a whole different issue. But I've been impressed by the science I've been hearing and the whole endocannabinoid system and the fact that I never knew that there could be a purpose and a reason other than, like I always thought it was escape the world. I got no reason to escape the world. I like the world. I'm okay. I don't need that. But once I found out, it's like, oh, wait a minute, hold on. You think I might be wired for this stuff? There might be a need for this that could help me maximize and optimize. And I focus on, my physical fitness for exercise and my diet and my sleep. So if this is truly a component, why wouldn't I? So now the question is, taking the information that we are learning and taking and on a journey to find out more information to say, what is the form that I feel most comfortable with, and what is the all those other dynamics, the level and you want to talk strains or cultivars. What is it that will help my body, me personally, as opposed to people who maybe have been smoking the same one forever? It's kind of like, when you eat the same meal. Like I eat the same meal every day, but a lot of information has gone to putting that meal together based on what I've learned about my own personal body and my metabolism and all of that. And same thing with smoking weed. You sit there and you're like, oh, this is what I've been smoking for the last 30 years of my life. And you say, did you ever consider, though, that there might be a better alternative? And most people, I would imagine, be like, no, this is just what I've done. And so I'm on that journey now of trying to go, of where is that for me? And I'm excited about it. And the first step might be CBD oil in my smoothies, and we'll go from there.
Timmy, have you started a journal yet?
No, but we did an episode where she taught me about a weed journal. And we created
cannabis
one about
journals. I did a cannabis journal as somebody who had smoked for 15 years before and never journaled anything. I took 1 year. So the year of 2020, I journaled absolutely every single time I consumed.
Nice.
And I can tell you, I can tell you what time of day and based on what I've eaten and how much caffeine that I've taken in, what my next joint should be.
Yes, I can tell you.
You sound like the kind of guy, all your stuff is in the same spot. You should.
Something that worked for Timmy and what he's talking about is really what we're talking about in general is the more knowledge we have, the more understanding of the plant. And somebody like yourself can say, I'm not a smoker. So that takes all of that out.
Yep.
So maybe I'll try tinctures or maybe I'll try teas.
Yep.
Yeah. But what am I trying to achieve? I'm trying to achieve good sleep. So what is going to work within that kind of consumption and then narrow it down with this, the tea doesn't work or this does work. And when you start journaling that and seeing when and what works, you go, okay.
I spent
shooting in the dark.
I spent a year and a half when MJ had got me the Fitbit. I spent a year and a half, like every day, tracking my food and sleep. Like I can tell you, I built my own spreadsheet with my sleep patterns. If I go to bed at 11:37, that is where I get my maximum sleep. And you might sit there and say, "Wait, that's ridiculous."
Not
like people say that's nerdish and stuff like that. It's like, no, I took in the data that I have. Now it's probably changed now because I got lazy with it, and my exercise program and everything has changed. So that plays a role. Like I'm finding I'm going to bed earlier.
I
but
like that you said that.
At one point, I did know the maximum time at that particular point in my life under that daily pattern. That's where I got my best sleeps.
So I like that you said that it could have changed because your body has changed and things in your life has changed because just like Annie was saying with cannabis consumption, what you need, he was so cute when he said, you've been smoking the same stuff for 30 years. Nobody smokes the same stuff for 30 years because you become immune to it. You got to switch up the cultivars, right? But, but, wait, where was I going with that? Oh, dang it.
I phased
Well,
out.
I wanted to say, like, there is an argument for the fact that your lungs aren't, like, there is an argument that they really weren't designed to take anything but oxygen into them,
Yeah.
right? Like, there is an argument for that. But there's also an argument that the wall between the lung and the outer, I'm sorry, I didn't even take biology in school, but that space in between the two walls of the lung,
Yeah.
where a lot of like cancers can form, that there's endocannabinoid receptors within there, so that if you had lung cancer, you should smoke. Like you should smoke cannabis.
Yeah.
Because of that space and because the receptors are in there, right? So again, knowledge, right?
Well, and don't be afraid of saying stuff like that. And because we, often, like, well, I'm not an expert, but I'm going to say this on our show. We've said it often. We like to spout off things that may or may not be true. So that way it covers everything.
And you know what? We are advocates. We are not doctors. We are not experts. We don't say that we are either of those things. We are two moms trying to start a conversation. That's it. Trying to move this culture forward and out of the closet, out of the dark. And if you're going to have these new conversations like you guys are doing and we're doing, then you're going to say stupid things. And it's okay to say stupid things because that will start a new conversation where you hopefully have a chance to learn something.
Yeah. Speaking of saying stupid things, one podcast I was talking about the different types of cannabis and talking about how indica has to do with like short and fat and sativa is tall and thin. And then I mentioned the lesser known cousin ruderalis. I made sure to mention ruderalis, but I completely forgot to mention that 98% of the strains that you're going to find on the market are neither sativa or indica, but most likely a hybrid. I didn't even mention the word hybrid in that entire segment. So it's very easy, like you're saying, to say something wrong or maybe forget to say something. But I did remember what I was going to say. It had to do with changing how your body changes over time. Timmy at one point became vegan for like an entire year. And
cold turkey. Just stopped eating meat.
No cold turkey.
No cold turkey.
No,
right?
no turkey. No. But he ended up losing a lot of weight and needed to add more protein back into his diet. So just like you have to adjust your diet depending on how your body is, the same thing with cannabis. You might have to add edibles a certain time of the year because your arthritis flares up or whatever. And everybody is different. So what works for you might not work for you. And it's like you're saying, a journal. You have to keep a journal.
Yeah, you got to keep a journal, and I always, new consumers, like I used to work, like you did, Mary Jane. I used to work in cannabis stores, and I always used to tell my employees, and I always used to tell our customers, like, this is a journey that you are on, and like you kind of have a path that you think you're going to walk on, but there's like this path has so many little jets coming out of it. Just go and enjoy it and be safe, right? So just put yourself in safe places with safe people and, make safe choices.
Consume with intention. I think that's what we're talking about. Consume
Thank
with
you for
intention.
saying that.
And whether your intention is to get it just, fucked up as much as you can, that is your intention. Go and achieve that.
And there's a time and a place for that. And it goes right back to what we were talking about at the very beginning of this conversation, is speaking with intention.
Yeah.
Consuming with intention. Listening with intention. I've been really working hard the last year on being an active listener, which is really hard.
2020, I was an active yeller. I just yelled a lot. I was actively yelling at everybody. I wouldn't even know that I was yelling.
But also we're having these conversations and you're thinking, what's my rebuttal? What am I going to say in rebuttal to what they're saying? Instead of just being like, I'm going to listen.
Yeah.
Take it all in. I don't have to have a rebuttal. I don't have to have it right away.
Exactly.
But I'm going to be a better listener if I'm listening without scripting in my head what I'm going to come back at you with. So just living with more intention in all aspects.
In everything I do,
That's an extremely hard lesson. A hard thing to do as well is to listen, to hear rather than listen to understand rather than listening to respond. Because if we're literally listening to respond, as you're telling me a story about your car breaking down, I'm searching the back of my brain about the last time my car broke down. So that way I have a story to tell you when you're done talking. But now all of a sudden I've stopped listening to what you've said.
It's so common. And it is, like you said, it's something I'm very conscious about. And I'm trying to retrain my brain. Yeah. And you catch yourself doing it. You're like, not every story needs a rebuttal story. Yeah. And you might have information or whatever. I could just take that in and be like, wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, let me ruminate on that for a while.
Well, a lot of times too, and my friends and I, we talk about this, you know, like we talk about, one of my friends has trouble with potty training and the other one, their son doesn't want to go to school or whatever the case may be. Sometimes when they will say bitch about this stuff, they're not looking for you to give them answers or whatever. They just want you to listen. Yeah. So sometimes just listen. So it's really nice.
That's really shitty that you're going through that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure what you guys all just said. My car broke down a while ago, and I wanted to tell you the story ever since she brought that up. Tell us a little. We're getting ready to let you go and live your lives, but talk to people about kind of a short summary of what it is that you want to accomplish. Why they should be listening to the Hi Ladies podcast?
Well, first of all, we came at it realizing there was definitely a hole in women-led conversations around cannabis. So we really wanted to do that. As you said throughout the conversation, we want to destigmatize. We want to educate, and we want to help build a community of like-minded, supportive people with good intentions. And as Amanda said, we are not experts, we are not doctors, but we are mothers, we are humans, we are consumers, we are people in this world. So if we talk about our experience, then maybe we can make other people feel more comfortable in the space. Is that good?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much summed it up. Yeah.
And where can people find you? We'll obviously have the links. So if you're watching or listening, the links will be in the description boxes, both on the podcatcher that you're listening on and as well on YouTube. But where can they find you?
Yes, we're on Instagram at Hi Ladies Podcast. You can always shoot us an email at highladiespodcast@gmail.com. Then we're on all of the listening platforms. I challenge you to find one that we are not on. If you find one, tell me. I'll get us on there.
And if you don't have a listening platform, just Google Hi Ladies. All of it will be us. You'll find our website, highladiespodcast@buzzsprout.com, but just Gmail or Google Hi Ladies Podcast. Mm-hmm. There is no excuse not to be able to listen to it.
That's right. We're everywhere.
Yeah, I found you guys incredibly easy. MJ, any final words?
No. I want to say hi, ladies, because he missed that opportunity at the beginning. I can't believe
that's how you start that's how you start the podcast.
That's how we start. That's right.
Yeah, we start with Hi Ladies and we end with Bye Ladies.
And did you was that like before you started your first recording, you guys were like, you know what, we're gonna start with Hi Ladies, or did that just start?
It was organic.
Yeah, I think pretty much everything from that has come out of our podcast has been super organic, and even our show titles don't get named until after we've recorded them.
Yep.
Yeah. So the show has definitely evolved over the last 3 seasons, and we hope to keep evolving.
Yeah.
You guys know what that's all about.
Yep.
We keep to hope bringing better content, more interesting interviews. Mm-hmm. We want to be better and better and better. But we started very organically, and we're going to grow very organically.
That's awesome. Well, we want to thank you so much for joining us today, and we're on the verge in the next little while here of finishing our season 1, and so we're excited to know that there are other people that are like-minded, hearing the very similarities in our backgrounds, the space that you're filling by having a women-led conversation like that. It's very cool. So we're happy to be in this space, kind of walking a journey with you, and hopefully we'll be able to talk again.
I'm thinking hopefully
Thank you so much, Timmy and Mary Jane. We are so blessed to have you within our community. It's just fabulous that we found each other, and let's march on into 2022 making change. Did they freeze?
Are we done? A little bit of time.
Marianne's frozen like that.
Thank you.
Bye, ladies. Bye,
Bye,
Mary Jane.
ladies.
Bye, Timmy. You're frozen.
Hey, so the power went off, and yeah, so now I'm down here dark in the studio. Hopefully, the interview, it still says it's live. So here we are, live. We lost all the power went out in, looks like in at least the street. Who knows how much more than that. And yeah, but this is good news. It looks like the interview still recorded. So
Yay!
I don't know, babe. Hey, look, I'm live right now on StreamYard.
Okay.
So StreamYard kept recording.
Oh, we're still there.
So we're live right now.
We have it shut. We have it shut off. So how about we have my camera on and we call them back? And we finish it in the dark.
Well, it's recording right now.
Okay. You want me to send her a message and be like, can you call back in?
I'll try, yeah.
Okay,
So,
where do I?
so here we are sitting in the dark in the studio. We just learned something new about StreamYard, that if the power goes off, it
Your
keeps
stream-
recording.
Yeah, your stream is still going.
We were just about to say goodbye too. We were literally just about to say goodbye, and all the power went off. And I'm telling you, my heart sank, because like we were literally on the thanks for coming, and probably 2 minutes away from shutting it off, and I was so afraid we lost it. But I think,
Let's see. Oh, here we are. Let's see.
so we're trying to call them back now and see what happens.
Not sure exactly how to do this.
Oh, are you calling them through Instagram?
Yeah, how else do I get a hold of them?
I don't know. I feel like we're sitting in a movie theater getting ready to watch the big show, and we are the big show. So I don't know if this is going to be tagged. This will probably be tagged on at the end of the interview.
Aiden, my son is asking if we have.
But if we might use this just as a separate clip. So let me just say this: we literally just were in the middle of, well, not even in the middle, at the end of almost an hour interview with Amanda and Annie from the Hi Ladies podcast. It was an amazing interview. I had a great time. They were fantastic to talk to. Had some amazing stories. And then we were literally about to say goodbye.
Saying thank you.
We were in the middle of like, where can they find you? And they were listing off where they could find you. And I was about to say, all right, well, everybody, thanks for tuning in. And off we were going to go. And at that point, after an hour-long conversation, the entire house went down. And it turns out
my phone. I got my phone.
So now we're sitting in our basement studio,
hoping our guests come back so we can say goodbye.
Seeing if our guests will come back, and if not,
I did send an email. Let me get to.
It's so weird, but StreamYard, you are about to get 6-star review if this works. If a power failure does not keep it from still streaming live, could you imagine if I did? Amazing. Could you imagine if I didn't go on to check StreamYard?
Oh my God, we'd still be recording.
it would still just be going live. Well, look, I'm not going to complain, StreamYard. It's a pretty good setup.
We're getting the candles out.
So we'll see if our guests come back in, and if not, we will wrap this thing up. I think our next interview was going to be rescheduled anyways, right? Yes. So what a bonus that was. They actually emailed us just before the power went out saying, can we reschedule the interview for this afternoon? So that was good timing. this was bad timing, but that was good timing. So now we just need the power to come back on for our evening interview.
Yeah, do you want to record one?
Hmm?
Do you want to record like a... Well, that's it. I guess that's
Okay, so...
And this is what happens when your power goes out.
Where's the...
Oh, you want me to turn the light on?
Maybe I should turn this way. Well, there we go. There we are. Well, thanks for joining us on another episode of On the Spot with Amanda and Annie from the Hi Ladies podcast. Their links will be all below. Definitely follow them, connect with them, listen to them, subscribe to them, give them multiple 5 stars on Apple
getting tired
or whatever.
On every podcast format or platform you can find. Remember, if you can't find them,
tell them.
Yeah.
Do the same for us too. We think we're on everything as well. So definitely like, follow, share our stuff as well. So here we are from our basement dungeon, parts unknown.
Are you going to tell them why it's dark, or are you just going to leave it to their, let them figure it out?
Well, we already did.
Oh, we're going to put this whole thing up?
No, probably won't put the whole thing up, but I might put the first part up and then do the official ending.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because your phone's about to die and the power's out. So we can't even charge it.
So I better end this now.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Are you looking for non-stop, continuous cannabis and psychedelic programming? If you are, then turn your browsers to 420radio.ca or paceradio.net, where you will find the 420 Pace re-rolled Saturday. Everything gets started at 8 a.m. Eastern Saturday morning.
Hi, I'm Timmy.
And I'm Mary Jane. He's the newbie.
She's the doobie, and this is the show
where we
tote
cannabis.
Talk.
From both sides.
Is that even possible?
Stay tuned. We'll be back after this toke.